Well, welcome back to the Anti-War Room. I'm here with Tom Andrews here with Susan Shaer, who is the founder, one of the founders, and the chair of the Women Without War Coalition, and also the executive director of Women's Actions for New Directions. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me.
Let's talk about, Susan, what has happened this week in the Congress, and let's step back a second and look at what the leadership of Congress, the Democrats, are now saying that they're going to be doing. They're going from a quote-unquote confrontational approach with the president, Republicans, to a more incremental approach. And we saw, for example, last night, the passage of the so-called Abercrombie-Tanner bill, which requires that the Pentagon submit a plan for the redeployment of troops out of Iraq within 60 days, and then to provide a plan and an update on that on their work with respect to that plan every 90 days thereafter. That passed, and then, of course, we heard from Chairman Obey of the Appropriations Committee a warning that he is going to hold the appropriations, this supplemental appropriations, this emergency supplemental appropriations bill of $190 billion that the president wants for Iraq. He's going to hold it until the president agrees to three things. One is to set a goal of having troops withdrawn by the end of his term, January of 2009. Secondly, to provide adequate time for troops having time off. And thirdly, to engage in a diplomatic offensive. Where are we with this, Susan? I mean, is this, what does this say, that we're now taking incremental approaches as opposed to confrontational approaches? Look, we've just had it. The only thing we can do is take small steps. And does that get us does that make progress for the anti-war movement? Are we getting closer to the goal of getting out of this war, or are we getting less close to the goal by giving political cover to Republicans who are otherwise feeling the heat at home?
It is progress. It's not the kind of progress that we would want. And one of the reasons it's progress is because they are committed to doing something every week, maybe even more.
That's the Congress.
Congress is more than once a week if they can, and on different levels. And so that is progress. The really astonishing thing is that they are in such a bubble and don't get what's going on in the rest of the country. We know that they're being driven by the 2008 elections, and so something happens in September in the year before an election, they suddenly think, oh my God, it's almost the end of this year.
Yikes.
Next year is an election year, so we better do something really quick. And that's happening with this as well, because the pressure, they came back after the summer recess, and the pressure had been on them at home, a lot of the pressure from Women Without War and all of the anti-war movement. And so they realized that they had to do something, and they weren't winning with the other kind of approach.
Right.
We are not incrementalists, you and I. We would like them to decisively just draw a line in the sand and say this is it. On the other hand, this has worked with a lot of other things in Congress, as you well know, and so I'm hopeful that this will work as well.
Some have said that, look, you know, we hear from Democrats all the time that you need 60 votes in the Senate in order to get a vote for cloture. You need 2/3 in either House or Senate, to override a presidential veto. Therefore, the Democrats' hands are tied. But isn't it true that the president needs a majority of the Congress in order to get any money? That you know, if you just turn the tide the other way, if the Democrats could be unified, they could stop the president from persecuting this war because they could stop the funding for the war.
You know, this is a time when I wish Democrats weren't being so the kinder and gentler party. I loved the fact that Nancy Pelosi came in and said, I'm the Speaker of the entire House, I'm going to be inclusive, I'm going to not be a brat the way the Republicans were to us, and I'm going to try to get you all together. And I loved that she did that. But right now, I wish that they would just stand up. This 60-vote rule is, they could filibuster this. They could shut the place down on every single piece of legislation if they wanted to, instead of taking the coward's way out and saying, oh, well, we need 60 votes. Yes, they do need 60 votes, but you're absolutely right. Turn that around and aim for something else. The same thing is true in the House. The House keeps pointing to the Senate and saying, well, we do things over here. They're the ones not doing anything. I'm sorry. You have a lot of power as a member of Congress to just, you know, when the Republicans were in power, they were putting anti-choice legislation on everything. Let's put Iraq legislation on everything.
Right. Right. But it seems that the Democrats are going in absolutely the opposite direction. I mean, you've got these incrementalist measures on the one hand, then the presidential candidates, the debate that was held last week in New Hampshire, each one of the leading presidential candidates for the Democrats, Senator Clinton, Senator Obama, and John Edwards, neither one of them would say that they would commit themselves to having all of the troops, U.S. troops, out of Iraq by the end of their term. That's 2013. So,
okay. I don't even like it when they ask those questions of the presidents because they're not president yet. There's so much that they don't know, and you and I know that we in the anti-war movement want all the troops home. We want them all to come home.
Right.
We want the whole oil thing to be settled. We want the country to be made whole again. A realistic person who thinks that they might actually sit in that seat knows how hard it's going to be to get every last man standing out of there, right? Because whatever, protecting whoever's left to protect the people who are rebuilding the country, for example. The people who are responding to polls in this country just want them to say, we want them home as fast as possible. Let's not argue around all of those details. And that's what we want Congress to do too. And so one of the problems with this incremental approach that you're talking about is that it is political horse trading, and it is inside baseball, and the people out there don't get it. And they're going to get tired of it. They're having war fatigue on the discussion. And so they're going off and doing, paying attention to other things because they feel as if no one's paying attention.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's up to groups like Win Without War, and certainly my organization, WAND, is just, we're not arguing around the edges anymore. We're just saying, an orderly and expeditious exit from Iraq. Get it started.
Right. Well, we are out of time, unfortunately. We could talk quite a bit more on this subject. We're going to be back next week. There'll be more legislation coming up on the floor next week. We will be here to talk about it. Thanks for joining the Anti-War Room. Thank you, Susan Shaer.
Thank you.